It's a controversial topic among parents. How much responsibility should kids have? Well, Utah recently became the first ever state to enact a free-range parenting law that says children should be able to do some things legally on their own to foster their self-sufficiency. Well, this is a little controversial, so what do we all think here?
So I thought this was really interesting. This was actually pushback against all the regulations that we keep reading about helicopter parenting. A very famous case in Maryland where a couple were actually prosecuted and fined because their 10-year-old and their 6-year-old were walking back a mile unsupervised by themselves, and they got in trouble for that, and they said that that was negligence. So the Utah law is actually a completely different approach. It's free-range parenting, where there's no age specified, and they actually give the parents judgment and jurisdiction over what kind of responsibilities and what kind of independence their kids might be able to have, sort of free of prosecution, free of judgment. It's not a requirement that they be supervised. It's more allowing them to choose when not to supervise their kids.
I'm aghast, really, because how can it be free-range parenting when the government is telling you how to parent, right? So, to me, there comes a point where parents are responsible for their kids, right? And it's the parent's decision as to whether the child, in my opinion, can walk to school or not. Every child is different in maturity, right? The neighborhoods are different. So I know they're trying to reverse something, but I find it kind of offensive that parents need to be told, your kids can do this. That's the parent's responsibility. And if there are certain things that are bad, then they may need to be prosecuted.
And it varies. What works in Utah may not work
in New York City.
100%.
Or Miami, where you grew up.
And I think they were sort of trying to send a message. I completely agree with what you're saying, because you have to know your kid and you have to know your environment.
Yes.
And that's the really hardest part about parenting, actually, is because you're so afraid all the time about keeping your child safe. But I think what they're trying to do is give the latitude back to the parents and the kids to give some independence back, because things have been so overregulated. This was a specific response to the Maryland law, which really took away a lot of the autonomy and a lot of the independence in parenting. I think Utah was actually trying to push back a little bit and say, hey, parents, use your judgment. You know your kid, you know your environment. Use your judgment.
I get it, but I thought that was sort of inherent.
It is sort of a huge paradox.
And then it's like, seems arbitrary. 10 years old versus 9.5, you know.
Every situation is going to be different.
Absolutely.
But it's not only the maturity level of the child, but you also have to consider the environment that the child is in, and probabilities. And so, of course, anything can happen anywhere, but statistically speaking, like, is your child being exposed to higher risk in particular areas? So you may want to protect them for a little bit longer in those situations.
How were you raised?
Well, listen, it was interesting. I was raised in Miami, but we also lived in Detroit, Michigan.
That's different.
In '69, right after the race riots. And I mean, I'm a Cuban immigrant. My dad was in dental school, and he would say, here, go downtown in Detroit and turn in these papers. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old. Nowadays, people would be like, aghast. You know, but of course you gave me a knife.
He'd be charged with child abuse.
I just had to be in by the time the street lights came on. Anybody? That was your clock. Like, that was when you knew.
Yeah,
you need.
I mean, back then we did. We walked to the store. We walked to school.
Right.
And I ran around town, rode our bikes.
And actually people say, well, but it's a different world today. You know, and I don't even know if that's true, to be honest. I think we hear more about what's going on, but again, I think it's a parent's judgment, you know, and if they're good parents, I think they decide what's good for their kids.
And over time, give your kids a little space.
I think that's what I'm learning as my kids are getting older. It's just how to grade their independence, and what's good for the 10-year-old may not be good for the 8-year-old, and really kind of using their personalities to help guide me. I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer as to what age it is safe. I completely agree with you about the environment, because we all live in such different neighborhoods, and there are different safety profiles depending on where you are.
So was it wrong that my mother didn't let me date till I was 35?